The night air hung heavy over Hudson Ranch, the kind of quiet that makes every creak of a gate or snap of a twig sound like a warning. Something was wrong tonight, though nobody could see it yet. A shadow moved across the paddock, tense and deliberate. Someone watching, waiting. Hearts were about to break, secrets were about to explode, and a single mistake could destroy everything. One wrong step, one wrong decision, and the life at Hudson could change forever. The moonlight painted the paddock silver as the horses shifted uneasily in the stalls. Amy was walking past the barn when she noticed a strange stillness among the animals. One of the younger horses, a chestnut with a bright coat, suddenly staggered and fell to the ground. The sound of hooves hitting the floor echoed through the quiet night, and Amy's heart jumped into her throat. She ran forward, calling its name, her voice shaking as she crouched beside the animal. The horse struggled to rise, but its legs gave way, and panic rose like a storm inside Amy. She could feel the cold sweat on her palms. The racing of her own heartbeat and the shadow of dread that had settled over Hudson. Jack appeared behind her, his face pale under the moonlight. He knelt beside the horse, checking its legs and listening to its breathing. Amy's eyes were wide with fear as she whispered, "This isn't normal, Jack. Something is wrong." Jack's jaw tightened, his brows furrowed in thought, and he shook his head slowly. He knew enough about horses to sense when something wasn't just an accident, when a familiar rhythm was broken. Meanwhile, Nathan was watching from a distance, his face hidden in the darkness, tense and desperate. He moved quickly from shadow to shadow, avoiding detection, his thoughts racing faster than his feet. Lou, standing near the barn, noticed Nathan's figure and frowned. Something about the way he lingered, so focused, so careful, didn't sit right. Lou didn't know what Nathan was planning, but instinct screamed at her that tonight would bring trouble. The night was alive with tension as Amy tried to soothe the horse, whispering softly, stroking its mane, while Jack muttered to himself, examining every inch for signs of what had caused the collapse. A cold wind blew across the paddock, stirring the hay and rattling the barn doors, as if the ranch itself was whispering a warning. The tension thickened when Amy noticed a strange smell in the air. Faint but pungent, almost metallic, it made her stomach churn and her head spin. Something had been done to the horse, something deliberate, but by whom? Her mind flashed briefly to Nathan, the one person who had been unusually secretive and withdrawn lately. Had he done this? Or was someone else taking advantage of the chaos he created with his desperation and ambition? The questions twisted in her mind as she looked at the horse, its breathing shallow, eyes wide with confusion and fear. Jack called out to Amy, his voice low and urgent. He wanted her to step back, to let him handle the situation, but she couldn't. Tear her eyes away from the suffering animal, her hands shook as she tried to steady herself, trying to focus on helping. Meanwhile, in the shadows, Nathan clenched his fists. He was desperate, racing against time, and knew that if anyone discovered what he had done or was planning, the consequences would be devastating. The moonlight caught his face for a brief second, and his expression was a mixture of fear, guilt, and cold determination. As the scene unfolded, the audience could feel the suspense, the dread, and the tension thick enough to almost touch. The quiet ranch, the fallen horse, the worried faces of Amy and Jack, and Nathan lurking in the shadows set the stage for a story of secrets, desperation, and consequences that would shake Hudson to its very core.
Always.
The night was far from over, and the collapse of one horse was only the first spark in a series of events that would reveal the poisoned hearts. Hiding beneath the surface of everyone at Hudson, the sun rose over Hudson Ranch, painting the morning sky in shades of pink and gold. But the warmth couldn't chase away the chill that had settled in Amy's chest. The young chestnut horse from last night was still weak, trembling under Jack's careful watch, and a heavy silence hung over the barn. Amy could not shake the feeling that this wasn't an accident, that the collapse had a purpose, and the thought made her stomach twist. She paced the barn aisle, running her fingers along the smooth wood of the stalls, trying to make sense of the unease that had wrapped the ranch in a quiet tension. Jack stood nearby, examining the water troughs, the feed, and even the hay. His brow furrowed as he muttered about toxins, contamination, careless mistakes. Lou arrived with her usual brisk steps, her eyes scanning the paddocks, her face tight with worry. She had noticed Nathan acting strangely over the past few weeks, furtive. Glances, late-night disappearances, hushed phone calls, and the fear that he might be connected to this incident gnawed at her. She watched Nathan as he appeared from behind a barn, pretending to check fences, but his movements were too precise, too calculated, too tense. Amy's heart thumped as she thought of all the times Nathan had seemed different, secretive, almost desperate. What was he hiding, and could it have anything to do with the horse's collapse? The thought made her hands clammy and her voice catch in her throat when she tried to call his name. Meanwhile, Jack's investigation began to uncover small but worrying details. The feed was fine. The water seemed clean at first glance, but subtle traces of chemicals lingered in the troughs. His experience told him that accidents didn't leave trails like this. Someone had interfered. Amy watched as Jack's eyes darted around, scanning every corner, and she realized that Hudson, the ranch they all loved, was under threat in ways they could barely comprehend. The question that haunted her was not just who had done it, but why. Why poison a horse? Why create fear? And why at Hudson of all places? Amy's mind wandered to past tensions. Rival ranchers, desperate investors, and shadowy suppliers she had only heard whispers about. All of them suddenly felt closer, real, and dangerous. Nathan, too, was a puzzle she couldn't piece together. Lou tried to pull Amy aside, whispering about following her instincts and keeping an eye on Nathan, but Amy felt torn. Her heart wanted to trust him, her head warned against it. The balance between loyalty and caution wavered like a fragile bridge over stormy waters, and every step she took felt like it could tip everything into chaos. As the hours passed, whispers traveled through the ranch. The stable hands spoke in hushed tones, glancing nervously at each other and at Nathan. Rumors spread like wildfire, each one a spark that fanned the flames of doubt. Amy felt the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. She had to protect the horses, the people, and the legacy of Hudson, but every clue she uncovered only deepened the mystery. The sense of urgency built, and the audience could feel it in every pan of the camera, in every shadow that stretched across the paddock. Then a small detail caught Amy's attention, a subtle chemical smell lingering. Near the water trough, her stomach lurched as realization dawned. This wasn't random. Someone had done this on purpose, and the horse's collapse was only the beginning. Jack's eyes met hers, sharing an unspoken agreement. They needed answers, and they needed them fast. Meanwhile, Nathan watched from a distance, the tension in his shoulders telling its own story. Desperation drove him, but guilt and fear were closing in. And with each passing moment, the trap around Hudson was tightening. The morning sun continued to climb, but the shadows of suspicion grew longer. Secrets and lies hung thick over the ranch, poisoning the hearts of everyone who stepped foot on the property. Amy knew the stakes were higher than ever. Hudson's peace was shattered, and the calm façade of daily life was gone forever. One wrong move could ruin everything, and as she stared at Nathan, disappearing behind a barn, her mind whispered the truth she wasn't ready to say out loud. This was only the beginning, and danger had already arrived at Hudson. Nathan's boots kicked up dust as he ran through the back trails of Hudson, the cold morning air biting at his face, his heart pounding like a drum in his chest. Every step felt like a countdown, every shadow a possible witness. He had to move fast, faster than anyone suspected, because if anyone found out what he had done, or what he had been forced to do, the consequences would be catastrophic. His mind was a whirlwind of fear, guilt, and calculation, he told himself. It was for the ranch, for Hudson's future, but deep down he knew the truth. Desperation had pushed him too far, and the line between right and wrong had blurred. He ducked behind a cluster of barns, breathing heavily, trying to slow the chaos in his mind. Memories of last night haunted him, the chestnut horse collapsing, Amy's terrified face, Jack's piercing eyes scanning the paddock. He had watched from the shadows, frozen, unable to act without revealing himself. The guilt burned hotter than the sun beginning to rise, and yet he couldn't stop. Time was slipping away, and the longer he stayed, the closer the truth crept. To exposing him, he needed to fix things to cover the cracks, but every move he made seemed to widen them instead. Nathan's desperation led him to the old supply shed at the edge of Hudson, a place few noticed and fewer still remembered. Inside, crates of feed and supplements were stacked neatly, but his eyes were drawn to the one crate he had tampered with. The one that had caused the horse to fall. His fingers trembled as he checked it, ensuring nothing obvious remained, adjusting labels, erasing traces. He couldn't let anyone link the accident to him. Not Amy, not Jack, not Lou. The ranch meant too much. But the irony wasn't lost on him. He was protecting Hudson by risking everything in it. Every rational thought clashed with the rising. Panic, and Nathan felt trapped in a storm of his own making as he moved back through the paddocks. Nathan spotted a delivery truck approaching. He recognized the supplier immediately, a man with too many secrets and too little conscience. Nathan's mind raced. If he could convince the man to stay quiet, to cover for him, maybe the collapse could be written off as an accident. But the man was shrewd, his eyes narrowing as he studied Nathan's anxious expression. Words stumbled over Nathan's tongue, promises, half-lies, desperate bargains. Every second counted, every hesitation could betray him. And yet the more he tried to control the situation, the more it slipped from his grasp. The shadows stretched longer across Hudson as Nathan fled through the fields, the morning sun casting long, sharp shapes that seemed to point accusing fingers at him. His mind flashed with memories of his family, of the times Hudson had been his safe place, the times Amy had trusted him without question. That trust felt like a fragile thread. Now, fraying under the weight of secrets and lies, he thought of the horse, trembling and weak, and a pang of guilt stabbed him. He hadn't wanted to hurt it, only to scare, to manipulate, to survive. But survival came at a cost, and the cost was growing heavier with each step he took. Nathan's breath came in ragged gasps as he reached the edge of the property, the woods beckoning him like a shadowed escape. He paused, looking back at Hudson one last time, the ranch bathed in morning light yet marred by fear and uncertainty. Somewhere inside, he knew he couldn't outrun this. The truth would follow him, creeping closer with every heartbeat, and sooner or later it would catch him. His race wasn't just against time, it was against guilt, against conscience, against the inevitable collapse of everything he had tried to protect. By the time Nathan vanished into the forest trail, Hudson seemed calm again, deceptively peaceful, but the tension lingered like smoke in the air. Amy's instincts were already sharpening, her heart sensing the fractures before her mind could catch up. Jack's suspicions were growing, Lou's intuition was humming in warning, and Nathan's desperate race was leaving trails only the keenest eyes could follow. The ranch teetered on the edge, and every decision Nathan had made, every step he had taken, was pulling Hudson closer to a reckoning. No one could ignore. He stood at the edge of the paddock, the morning sun casting a warm glow that couldn't reach the chills settling in her chest. The chestnut horse was stable, but the fear and uncertainty lingered, like smoke that refused to clear. Her hands were trembling, not from cold, but from the storm of emotions inside her. She couldn't stop thinking about Nathan, about the way he had acted lately, so tense, so secretive. Her mind spun with questions, each one sharper than the last. Could she trust him? Could she still believe in the man she had known all these years? Or had desperation changed him completely? She replayed the moments from the night before over the collapse, Jack's tense examination, and Nathan's shadowed figure slipping silently among the barns. Every detail twisted into a new suspicion, a new fear. Amy's heart felt heavy, poisoned by doubt. She had trusted Nathan without question for so long, and now that trust felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter at the slightest impact. She walked slowly toward the barn, trying to steady herself, but every creak of the wood, Every sound of hooves stirred memories of fear and betrayal. Inside the barn, Lou watched her carefully. "Amy, you have to be careful," she said softly, her voice laced with worry. "Something's wrong, and I don't think Nathan's telling the whole story." Amy's eyes filled with tears, anger and sadness mingling in a storm she couldn't control. "I want to trust him, Lou. I really do. But I don't know how anymore," she whispered, her voice breaking. The weight of responsibility pressed on her shoulders, heavier than she had ever felt. The ranch wasn't just a home, it was a legacy, a promise. And now, it felt like that promise was slipping through her fingers because of secrets she didn't yet understand. Amy's thoughts drifted to the bond she shared with Hudson. With every horse, every person who had shaped her life here, she felt torn between loyalty to the ranch, love for Nathan, and the sharp sting of doubt that had wormed its way into her heart. She remembered the countless times she had forgiven, trusted, and believed, and now all of that seemed fragile, threatened by something she couldn't yet name. Every glance at Nathan's empty barn, every whisper from the stable hands, every worried look from Jack made the poison in her heart spread further. Then she remembered the smell she had noticed. Near the water trough, subtle but lingering. Her stomach twisted. This wasn't just about fear or misunderstanding, it was deliberate. Someone had interfered, and she feared Nathan might be at the center. Her emotions collided: anger, fear, sadness, confusion. She wanted answers, but every step toward the truth felt like walking on a thin wire over a stormy sea. She felt the betrayal as if it had already happened, even before any confession had been made, and it left her hollow. Questioning everything she believed about loyalty and love, Amy's mind replayed moments from earlier in the morning. Worried glances of the stable hands, Jack muttering about toxins, Lou urging caution. Her emotions were a whirlwind, spinning between hope and despair, love and fear. She wanted to confront Nathan, to demand the truth, but the thought of what she might hear froze her. Could she face the reality if he admitted what she feared most? Her heart thudded painfully in her chest, a reminder that trust, once poisoned, is never easy to restore. As she walked out of the barn, the wind stirred her hair and carried a faint scent of hay and horse sweat, mingling with something sharp, almost metallic. She froze, her pulse quickening, knowing instinctively that the poison was not just in the water, not just in the horse, but in the trust she had placed so fully in Nathan. Her eyes searched the horizon, half expecting him to appear, half dreading it, and she realized that Hudson was no longer just a ranch. It was a battlefield of emotions, secrets, and choices. Amy's heart, once steady and strong, now beat like a fragile flame in a storm, uncertain if it could survive the next confrontation. The afternoon sun poured golden light over Hudson Ranch, but the warmth did nothing to soothe the tension that had tightened around every corner of the property. Lou had been quietly investigating, her sharp eyes noticing small discrepancies in records, invoices that didn't add up, and subtle shifts in the way Nathan had been acting. She moved with purpose, slipping into the barn office where papers lay scattered across the desk, evidence of transactions and deliveries Nathan hadn't explained. As she sifted through the documents, a cold realization sank, and this was more than just an accident. Someone had planned this. The threads all pointed toward Nathan. Amy arrived just as Lou uncovered a set of altered invoices for feed and supplements. Items that should have been standard and safe but had been tampered with. Her stomach dropped. As she read the numbers, the tiny notes scribbled in Nathan's handwriting. Each one a step in a dangerous chain that had led to the horse's collapse. Her mind raced. Memories of Nathan's desperate behavior flashing vividly. Late-night departures, nervous glances, whispered phone calls. She felt a mix of shock, betrayal, and fear, her chest tightening as the reality hit. Nathan hadn't just been careless. He had risked lives, the ranch, and their trust. Jack approached silently, having followed Lou into the office. His face was grim, his eyes scanning the papers before resting on Amy. "This wasn't an accident," he said quietly, the weight of his words filling the room. "Someone made a choice, and someone has to answer for it." Amy's voice trembled as she whispered Nathan's name, almost hoping she would be wrong. But the truth was undeniable. laid bare in ink and paper, proof of a plan gone too far. Her heart ached, the poison of betrayal spreading deeper with every second she stayed in the room. The barn seemed to shrink around them, the once familiar walls now feeling like a cage trapping secrets and lies. Nathan emerged then, hesitant, his expression a mask of guilt and fear. He tried to explain, to justify his actions as a desperate attempt to protect Hudson. Amy's eyes narrowed, tears threatening to spill as the full truth began to unravel. Every excuse he offered sounded hollow against the documents Lou held, against the collapse of trust and safety that had now become palpable. Nathan's hands shook as he confessed, the tension that had clung to him like a second skin finally breaking. He admitted to tampering with the supplements, trying to sabotage a rival's influence over Hudson, never intending to harm the horse. His voice wavered, filled with a mixture of desperation, fear, and shame, but the damage had been done. The revelation hung in the air like a storm cloud, thick and suffocating, touching everyone in the barn. Amy felt the sharp sting of betrayal pierce her chest. The trust she had placed in Nathan now fractured beyond repair. Outside, the ranch seemed to hold its breath. The horses shifted uneasily, sensing the tension, and even the wind seemed to pause, carrying the weight of secrets that could no longer be hidden. Amy stepped back, her mind racing as she processed Nathan's confession, trying to separate the man she knew from the choices he had made. Lou and Jack exchanged glances, silently acknowledging that Hudson had survived crises before, but this one was different. The poison was not just in the supplements or the horse, it was in the hearts of those who had tried to protect what they loved and had failed. Nathan's eyes pleaded for understanding, for forgiveness, but Amy could barely meet them. The realization that even desperate intentions could have devastating consequences struck her with full force. Hudson had endured storms before, but this storm had come from inside, from someone she had trusted. Someone whose race against time had blinded him to the harm he caused. The secret had been exposed, but the scars it left were only beginning to show. Amy knew that even if the ranch survived, the hearts at Hudson had been poisoned in ways that could not easily heal. And the path forward would demand courage, resilience. And the hardest choices of all, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Hudson, turning the familiar barns and paddocks into a stage for a reckoning that no one could escape. Amy stood in the center of the yard, her arms crossed, eyes blazing with a mixture of hurt and determination. Nathan approached slowly, each step weighted with the knowledge that the truth could no longer be hidden. The wind whipped through the ranch, rustling the hay and carrying the scent of horses and earth, as if nature itself was holding its breath for what was about to unfold. Every moment stretched taut, the silence between them charged with years of trust, loyalty, and now betrayal. Amy's voice broke through the tension, sharp and unyielding. She demanded the truth, every word echoing across the paddock. Nathan, I trusted you, I believed in you, in everything we've built here. How could you risk everything, even the lives of these horses, for your secrets? Her eyes filled with tears that she refused to wipe away, each one a testament to the storm inside her. Nathan's jaw tightened, and he struggled for words. But the weight of the evidence Lou and Jack had uncovered pressed down on him like a physical force. There was no escaping it this time. Jack stepped forward, his face set with quiet authority. Hudson is more than just a ranch. It's a home, a family, a legacy. And when someone betrays that, there are consequences. Actions have weight, Nathan, and you can't run from what you've done. His words landed like stones, heavy and unavoidable, and Nathan flinched under the truth of them. The stable hands and Lou watched silently, the air thick with tension. Each heart beating fast, each mind anticipating the inevitable unraveling. Nathan swallowed hard, realizing that the façade he had maintained for so long was crumbling before him. Nathan finally spoke, his voice trembling with a mix of guilt and desperation. He admitted everything, the tampered supplements, the plan meant to sabotage a rival, the reckless gamble he thought would secure Hudson's future. His confession spilled out in a torrent, each word exposing the desperation that had driven him. To this point, Amy's hands trembled, Her eyes locked on him as she absorbed the weight of his words. Shock, anger, and heartbreak collided within her, each emotion sharper than the last. She realized that Nathan had crossed a line, one that could never be erased, as the pain of it pressed down on her chest like a physical force. The confrontation escalated as Amy demanded accountability, refusing to let Nathan justify his choices with excuses. Her voice carried across the ranch, unwavering and strong. "You can't fix this with words, Nathan. You can't undo the fear you caused, the trust you broke. Hudson doesn't belong to just one person. It belongs to all of us, and you almost destroyed it." Nathan's head bowed, shame written in every line of his face. He had thought he was protecting the ranch, but in reality, his actions had put everything in jeopardy. And now he had to face the consequences. The ranch itself seemed to echo the emotional intensity of the confrontation. Horses shifted nervously in the paddocks, the wind howled through the barns, and even the sun seemed to dim as if acknowledging the gravity of the moment. Lou and Jack exchanged glances, silently reinforcing that Nathan would have to make amends, that this reckoning was necessary for the ranch to survive. Amy's gaze never wavered, her heart torn between lingering care for Nathan and the undeniable truth of his betrayal. The moment was raw, unfiltered, and unforgettable, a turning point that would mark Hudson forever. As Nathan stepped back, the silence returned, heavy and suffocating. The consequences were clear, and Hudson's family and future now hung in the balance. Amy's hands shook, her mind racing with the aftermath, but her resolve had strengthened. She knew that trust, once broken, could never be the same, and Nathan would have to live with the weight of his choices. The confrontation had revealed the truth, stripped away the lies, and left Hudson standing at the edge of a new reality, one where actions, consequences, and hearts poisoned by secrets would shape the future in ways none of them could predict. The sun dipped low behind the hills, casting long shadows over Hudson Ranch and turning the sky into a canvas of orange and violet. The paddocks were quiet now, almost eerily still, the chaos of the day replaced by a heavy calm. Amy walked slowly along the fence line, her fingers brushing against the wood as if grounding herself in the familiar touch of the ranch she loved. Her heart still ached from the confrontation, the revelation, and the betrayal, and she could feel the weight of every choice pressing down on her chest. The chestnut horse had recovered enough to stand and walk, but its legs still trembled, a fragile reminder that even when wounds appear healed, traces of pain linger beneath the surface. Nathan stood at the edge of the woods, his figure outlined. Against the fading light, he didn't approach, couldn't. The truth had been laid bare, and though he longed for forgiveness, he knew some bridges couldn't be crossed again. His eyes followed Amy silently, filled with regret, fear, and a longing he dared not voice. Hudson had been his home, his heart, but his actions had changed everything. He had raced against time and desperation, and though the ranch survived, he had left scars that could never fully fade. The wind carried his presence like a whisper across the paddock, and Amy felt it, a reminder that some wounds remain long after the moment has passed. Jack and Lou were nearby, standing together. Watching the horizon, Jack's face was calm but reflective, the weight of leadership evident in his posture. Lou's expression was softer, but her eyes held quiet understanding of the pain that had unfolded. The three of them represented the strength of Hudson, the resilience that had carried the ranch through storms before. Yet even they recognized that trust, once fractured, takes time to mend, and some betrayals leave echoes that linger longer than the immediate damage. Amy's gaze swept over the familiar barns, the paddocks, and the horses grazing quietly in. The evening light, everything seemed peaceful, yet beneath the surface, tension hummed like a silent drumbeat. A reminder that life at Hudson was never truly predictable. Amy paused near the fence, taking a deep breath, the scent of hay and earth filling her senses. She reflected on the events that had unfolded, the collapse, the secrets, the confrontation. Every moment had shaped her understanding of loyalty, love, and the fragility of trust. Her heart had been tested, stretched, and bruised, but she also felt the glimmer of resilience that had always defined her in Hudson. The ranch had survived, the horses were safe, but the emotional scars remained. She knew that healing would take time, that forgiveness might be complicated, and that the people she loved carried their own burdens from the choices made. As the sun finally disappeared behind the hills, the sky darkened, leaving a soft twilight over the ranch. Amy's eyes met Nathan's one last time from across the yard, a silent acknowledgement of what had been lost and what could never return. Nathan turned away, disappearing slowly into the shadows of the forest trail, leaving Hudson behind, but carrying the weight of his actions with him. Amy remained at the fence, steadying her breath, feeling both grief and relief, knowing that life would continue. But the echoes of poisoned hearts and secrets would forever linger.